Good. Welcome to QE Auto. Today's demo will be a coolant pressure test. To do a coolant pressure test, we need to first indicate on the vehicle where to do the coolant pressure test and where the parts and pieces are located. On this vehicle, we have on the top right hand corner, in front of the driver, we have a reservoir and a reservoir cap. Some older vehicles, and even some newer vehicles, will have what we call as a radiator in the front with a radiator cap. Now, the radiator cap is the exact same thing as the reservoir cap, and that will just be located on the front of the vehicle. So you're going to have one or the other. Now that we have established that we have a reservoir cap, what we need to do is we need to remove that cap and take a look carefully on the cap itself. If you can see on the right hand side here, it has a PSI rating. Now in this case, just so I can see it, it is 17 PSI. From that, we need to know that number a little bit later. So knowing that now helps us for our future. We're going to put this off to the side. Before we actually do a pressure test, we need to first check the freeze point of the coolant itself. Now, coolant is a mixture of antifreeze and water, and this prevents the engine and other parts from freezing and breaking, cracking. So it is a mixture of antifreeze and water. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the antifreeze coolant tester to place it into the reservoir or into the radiator if you had a radiator, and we are going to carefully suck up some of the coolant into this tester, and we are going to then register via the red little arrow on the numbers that are here the freeze point of this coolant. Now you can check on all data or other maintenance manuals to see what good coolant level should be like, but you're going to be recording this on your lab sheets for your labs. So once you have recorded this, make sure that you squeeze everything back out into that reservoir or into the radiator, and carefully grab a rag to dry everything off so that you're not dripping any coolant anywhere. So after we have checked the freeze point of our coolant, the next thing that we need to do is find the right adapter that goes along with our reservoir cap. Now, you'll see that there is external threads on the reservoir and internal threads on the cap. So we need to find an adapter that has threads on the inside of the cap. Now in this case, if we look at our adapters, I have already located the correct one, and this might take you a couple times to choose different ones to see which one works, but you want to make sure that they seal in the exact location. So in this case, the reservoir cap has a rubber seal on the bottom, and so does the adapter. The adapter also has another portion of it here that will not affect our testing, but this is a universal adapter. Once we have the right adapter, we are going to carefully insert it onto the reservoir cap, or onto the reservoir, and tighten it down just by hand. No tools are needed for install. Make sure it is nice and tight. Once we have our adapter installed, we are going to take our pressure pump, and just like an airline fitting, we're going to place it onto the adapter, and then at this point we will then slowly, like a bike pump, pump up the pressure as it indicates on the dial to the 17 psi or whatever psi is required on your vehicle. So by slowly pumping this up, we should see the needle start to rise to the pressure that is required. Once we get to our desired pressure, okay, in this case I'm not going to let it get to the 17 that we need, we are going to just rest it somewhere carefully on the vehicle, and we are going to start a 3-minute timer. Now once we have that 3-minute timer started, we are constantly going to monitor that needle to make sure that it's not dropping. If it's dropping, that means that there's a leak somewhere in the system or somewhere in our testing equipment. And the way to do that, to check that, is to make sure that we have no air leaking out of certain areas, and also check underneath the vehicle to see if there's any coolant leaking. If it does drop and we've checked everything and we've tried to fix it, we want to repump that up to whatever number we had, and we are going to start a 3-minute test again at that point. Once we have completed our 3-minute test, what you need to do to release the pressure is taking a rag, and on the back side of our hose we have a little tab right here that we need to press, but we need to fully engulf that so that in case any coolant does come up from the reservoir, it's not going to go splashing everywhere all over you and all over the vehicle. Now carefully pressing that back and forth will release all the air out of that system, and then at that point you can carefully pull that sheath up, remove the pressure tester, place that back in this case, and then remove the adapter. Thus concludes the coolant pressure test.